Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the Babolat Pure Aero 2019. And to be perfectly honest with you, I definitely had some biases coming into this racket review. We all know that Rafa uses this racket, and although I'm pretty sure that's probably enhanced with things like maybe lead tape or maybe he adds silicone to the grip, I'm definitely not saying that he does because I honestly have no idea. But I do know that in Babolat's lineup, this racket seems to be the more spin-oriented racket of the three. So here are some specs and claims Babolat says will, help achieve this spin that this racket is known for. The Aero modular tech and improved grommets and bumper guards allow for the racket to swing even easier than apparently the older versions of this racket. So it should be a little bit easier to add spin. And along with the Aero modular tech that this racket is known for, Babolat also incorporated the FSI spin tech that gives the racket a more open string pattern and supposedly allows for better feel on the racket. And then we also have the addition of the carbon ply stabilizer. Basically, all that does is give the racket a lot more control as well. Some other important specs about this racket: the Pure Aero has a 100 square inch frame, and it's about 11.2 ounces strong, and the string pattern is still 16 by 19 and is a whopping $229 online at tenniswarehouse.com as I'm recording this. So definitely an investment, especially if you're a more competitive player and need to buy at least 2 or 3 rackets. It is definitely not cheap. Today, I strung this racket with the Babolat Pro Hurricane at 52 pounds. So please give this video a like before I get into the actual review. Subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't already so that you'll be notified when the next video goes live. So here are my actual impressions about the Babolat Pure Aero 2019. Like I said earlier, I was a little biased going into hitting with this racket because all I could think about was, oh, this racket is made for players who hit with a ton of spin. I don't hit with a ton of spin, so this racket probably won't be for me. And on the forehand side, I especially think that was true. Although, I eventually found my timing with this racket on my forehand, the ball never really felt clean coming off my racket. I could feel more vibration with this racket in comparison to the Pure Strike, especially when I was hitting a ball that was a little bit higher, like above my shoulders. And whenever I wanted to flatten out that ball, it was just really uncomfortable. Regardless, even regular balls never felt that amazing to me off my racket. Whenever I didn't use spin. And I think that's something that really stuck out to me. If I wasn't hitting with some sort of spin with this racket, it didn't feel good. But if I was hitting with spin, then wow. The ball came off my racket so nicely with a ton of spin and, almost effortlessly. So hitting high balls to my partners to put him on defense was super easy. And when he pulled me out of position, I was able to, create this neutralizing high ball to get myself back into better position. Even if we were only hitting cross court, I still needed to do that. And hitting with spin was so easy. But it still didn't have that feel that I wanted to feel. And it just still didn't feel as clean as I would have liked. So overall, I wasn't a huge fan of this racket on the forehand side. Switching over to the backhand side, surprisingly, I had an entirely different experience. Remember what I said about how the racket does really well when you hit with spin? Well, I guess my backhand naturally has a little bit more spin than my forehand side. So on my backhand, this racket felt so good. Like that clean feeling that I was searching for on my forehand side and never found. Well, I had no trouble at all finding it on my backhand side. Literally, from the first ball, it felt just so easy. And even high balls to my backhand side, I could roll them back with topspin even easier than what I did with the Babolat Pure Strike. And even if I decided to take my backhand a little bit earlier, you know, on the rise, the ball still flew off my strings, just no problem. I genuinely have no complaints at all with this racket on my backhand side, you know, and my slice was solid too. I could be aggressive and defensive with this racket, no problem. So maybe I shouldn't have been so biased to begin with, because on the backhand side, it's my favorite racket so far, but I guess that doesn't really mean too much because I can only compare it to the Babolat Pure Strike. But still, I just love this racket and the way that it felt coming off my backhand side. And I'm assuming it's just because I hit with just a little bit more spin naturally. So, yeah. On to volleys. Once again, I don't hit too many volleys as it is, so I'm really just looking for a racket that consistently makes my volleys go deep. Like, the racket should be able to do that at a bare minimum. So some positives with this racket at the net is even when I was stretched out to the sides, I was able to place my balls back deep, or at least, you know, past the service line without much effort. So I suppose that even when my ball didn't hit the center of the strings, the ball still had some sort of power coming off the racket. And lower volleys weren't too much of an issue either. I tend to just bend my back over, really bad habit, instead of bending my knees to get to a low ball. So the fact that it's mostly the racket that's coming up with the leverage to get my ball over the net is definitely a great perk. Even higher volleys, similar to the volleys I was stretched out wide on, I felt like I pretty decent control and could aim the ball back deep without much issues. So overall, this racket's, you know, pretty solid on volleys. I didn't get a chance to hit overheads just because my shoulder was bothering me this day, so I didn't want to push it too much. And so unfortunately, no review with this racket on the serve either. But I promise in my next review there will definitely be some serving in there, so just stay tuned for that. So overall, this racket was, you know, pretty decent. If we take a look at the way that I'm rating rackets for now, I would give this racket a 19.5 out of 25, and here's how I got the score to each category. So for the first category, we have power, and I think that this racket is tailored to the player who hits with a lot of spin, and it doesn't add any extra power to, you know, my strokes. My ground strokes seemed pretty decent on each side, and if anything, I really struggled on my forehand side to get any resemblance of the powerful forehand that I always try to hit. Definitely on the backhand side, it was more steady and honestly felt great, but if I think about my style of play, you know, I want to hit more forehands than backhand. So if I had to pick, I would want a racket that accommodates my forehand over my backhand, and you know what, this just wasn't a racket. So for power, this racket gets a 3.5 out of 5. The next category is spin. And you know what? On the plus side for spin, this racket definitely gets a 5 out of 5. No questions asked. If you're looking for a racket that enhances your spin, I do feel like this one will do it for you. And let me be clear, this racket enhances the spin that you have. So if you hit pretty flat, you won't really notice a difference in your ball. It'll still be flat. So you have to put spin on your ball, and this racket will give you a little bit more spin effortlessly, you know. I hope that made sense. Next, we have maneuverability, and at 11 grams, this racket really isn't too heavy, at least not for me. So I didn't feel like I had to adjust my swing speed or try to, you know, muscle the ball at all to get it over the net. So I will give this racket, you know, a 4 out of 5 because it was a pretty easy racket to just pick up and use. Next category, we have vibration dampening, and for this, I will give this racket a 3.5 out of 5. And really, it should probably be a 4, but every single time I hit the ball, it was like ping, ping, so loud that even though I couldn't exactly feel a ton of vibration on every hit, I knew that the racket was vibrating more just because of the sound that it was making. So I don't feel like this racket did, you know, a superb job at making sure that my arm wasn't feeling all the vibration every time that the racket hit the ball. And the bonus category, style. So to be perfectly honest, I'm not a huge fan of the paint job on this racket. The yellow, which is really bright and loud, isn't something that is really appealing to me. I would prefer a much less out there sort of color. So unfortunately, this racket doesn't get the 1 point for style. So if we tally up all the points, this racket does receive a 19.5 out of 25. Not too bad. Definitely just not the racket for me. But like I said earlier, if you're a player who hits with a ton of spin, definitely give this racket a try. I think it would work wonders for you. All right, guys, so that is the end of the review. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment below if you have tried this racket out and what do you think of it? What was I missing? I hope to see you in the next video. It should be dropping in a few days, and that'll be some point play with the Babolat Pure Aero 2019. So definitely subscribe so you don't miss it and hit that notification bell too. And I'll see you in the next one. Happy hitting.